Hello and welcome to another Quaranstream. Oh god, what's going on up here? Here's gone crazy. How's it going, everybody? So today, we've been talking about sort of like characters or like magical themes for specific chapters, but I thought today I'd talk about something a little different, if you can tell from the title screen I put up today. When you think of the Starks, when you think of the direwolves, you think of like Northern Justice, ice, the frozen winds of winter, all these things about the Starks. But one of the more often the symbolic and source of their strength of our lovable northern doggos is Winterfell itself, the castle, the fortress, all the things. Yeah, I'm gonna change this angle. There we go, I like that better. Oh, Aaron is already calling for the hat. We'll put on the hat if we get to... We'll do the same things last time. Get to 150 likes. I'll put on a silly hat. Yes, let the public shaming begin. This has begun. Good call, Maester Zen. That's right, this is public shaming. That's what's going on here. Let me get this mic out of the way. So anyway, Winterfell, the gigantic sprawling castle that serves as the heart of the North. All roads and power in that region run through it, and it's a very important part of the story. It's where we're introduced to the Starks. They are constantly thinking about it. All the things. It's great. And I have a quote here I want to start off with. A lot of the characterization we get from Winterfell is actually from Bran Stark. I really need to work out this camera angle beforehand. There we go. I think that's better. This will all be cut out later. So this is just a treat for you guys. Okay. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. There we go. Bran could perch for hours among the shapeless, rain-worn gargoyles that brooded over the first keep, watching it all. The men drilling in with wood and steel in the yard, the cooks tending their vegetables in the glass garden. Restless dogs running back and forth in the kennels, the silence of the godswood, the girls gossiping beside the washing well. It made him feel like he was the lord of the castle, in a way even Robb would never know. It taught him Winterfell's secrets too. The builders had not leveled the earth. There were hills and valleys behind the walls of Winterfell. There was a covered bridge that went from the 4th floor of the bell tower across the 2nd floor of the rookery. Bran knew about that. And he knew you could get inside the inner wall by the south gate, climb 3 floors, and run all the way around Winterfell through a narrow tunnel in the stone, and then come out of ground level at the north gate, with 100 feet of wall looming over you. Even Maester Luwin didn't know that. Bran was convinced. Yeah, so that's that is some very interesting characterization in the castle. You sort of get the idea of like a Hogwarts kind of place, like sort of like old town, a big maze, lots of secrets, stuff to be uncovered, classic Gurm. It's a castle that holds secrets above and below that serves not just as the home and setting for the Starks, but it seems like it holds important keys for our Song of Ice and Fire. And that even extends beyond the Northmen themselves. Melisandre of Ashai's vision of Stannis raising his banners over the fortress is a key vision of her idea for his eventual victory. Holding Winterfell and its power is even a major plot point for Southerners like Tywin, Cersei, and Littlefinger, and it drives major parts of the books, even, well, Theon and the Boltons holding it. It's not just the castle, it's not just their home, it's a key part of the books that keeps coming up. And a lot of times when the Starks think about their being with their family, they think about being home in Winterfell itself and the different aspects, which are incredibly strange. Totally unique, nothing like it in the rest of the books. Fascinating place. So today, let's plumb the depths of its crypts, climb the towers with Bran, hold court in the Great Hall, and sit beneath the pensive weirwood of the Godswood. This will be exciting. I love Winterfell. Before we do that, I just wanted to say again, this was something I did last week. I'm going to do it again this week. All the revenue from this stream, I'm going to donate to a fund or charity supporting the protesters out there and Black Lives Matters and all that other kind of stuff. You can send super chats if you want. Just warning, YouTube takes a big cut. If you want to do that but don't want to give YouTube half your money, you can just do it and post in the chat that you did, or you can tag me on Twitter with like the receipt. And I also have a PayPal link set up that you can send to, which takes much less of a cut of the money, so that it will go directly to good places. So yeah, if that's what you want to do with super chats today, that's totally fine. Works the same. I'll just and also the ad revenue, the whole thing. I'm just gonna give it away. And also I wanted to take some time before we get into the rest of the theory and talk about well, not the theory, talk about Winterfell. And this is something I wanted to do on Tuesday on that community post I put up, but I did not, and I probably should have. So Girls Gone Canon, if you don't know them, Eliana and Chloe put up an episode earlier this week where they wanted to highlight creators in the community who are people of color or are black and don't get the attention that they should. So yeah, Steven Stark, YouTube takes 40%, PayPal takes 1%. So I'll be watching my phone as this goes on. So we'll try and highlight it that way. There's links all below the chat if you want to go find these creators and the different places that you can support them. So the first one was Hypes Watch. They're kind of a community, well, not really a community, a large number of people usually on streams. They do reviews and they talk about Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire a lot. They haven't been active in a while, but as a lot of people you probably know in the community, like Don Willie, big cast of characters on that one. And speaking of Don Willie, he has his own YouTube channel. The most recent stuff I saw from him was his Fire and Blood videos. Did him about a little bit over a year ago, it looked like. Has his own personal YouTube channel. Again, links are down below if you want to check him out. There's also Alicia Kingston. She's doing quite a lot of streams recently. Alicia's what were they talking about? The last one they did was they were talking about a lot of tinfoil. I guess they came over from another channel and kept doing it. She also was on a panel at Con of Thrones with Tony Teflon, Manucular Bomb. If you don't know him on Twitter, he was also on one of my reviews during season 8, and with Lisa Spinagle, where they were talking about what it's like being a person of color in the Game of Thrones community. I don't know. I was trying to find the audio for that, but you know, could not find it in time. It might be out there. Then we have, oh, you may know her from this chat and many others, Chrissy of Old Stones. She has her own YouTube channel. In it, she mostly does like dramatic readings of chapters and poetry, but she recently put up one that a poem by Langston Hughes called "Let America Be America Again." That was really great. Definitely check out her channel. Her dramatic readings are pretty good. Well, they're great. Sorry. Sorry, Chrissy, if you're listening. They're awesome. Yeah, Chrissy's a mod everywhere. She does do her own stuff, which I wasn't aware of, and I was glad to find out. The I Need More Wine pod, that's done by Christine Crippins and Jocelyn. God, I forget her last name. We're in a Slack together. How am I forgetting her last name? It's a great podcast. The two of them do pop culture. They get wine drunk and talk about it. They're hilarious and very insightful. Some of the smartest people I know. Definitely check that out. I've been trying to get them to talk about some of my favorite British panel shows. Hopefully. There's also Quinn of Quinn's Ideas. It used to be called Ideas of Ice and Fire. Lots of Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones theories. He's also focusing a lot on Dune with the movie coming out soon. I'm guessing that he will be a person to go see about that. Let's see here. If you can't tell, I made a list because there's a lot of them. Let's see here. Um, a YouTuber named T-Baby does a lot of theories and reviews. Tony Teflon, he's been recently doing, from what it looked like on his channel, a lot of Jackbox stuff. He does a lot of theories. He's most famous for his I hate the children of the Force and they are super evil. Very passionate about that one. But he also talks about other TV shows. He's been doing Tiger King, and I also saw that he's been doing Westworld. Yes, I love British panel shows. They're some of my favorite. There's the Critical Hit Shop, which is an SE store. Again, all these links are down below in the description of this if you want to go check them out yourself. Looks like they do mostly hardwood magnets and pins. Some of them look really cool. They make them in like hexagons, so you can make like a whole pattern. It looked really cool. I'm gonna get to them, Sasuke. Don't worry. I got a whole list here. There's also the Amber Spycast, which is his Dark Materials podcast. That's not one I know personally. Again, I got this from Chloe and Eliana, and they love his Dark Materials, so I can't vouch for them personally. I haven't gone and listened to them, but if they like them, then it's probably pretty good. Those two are great. There's Draft Urgy. They're a fantasy artist. You may recognize the art from that stream I did with Poor Quentin about Euron. They're responsible for that famous one of Euron with the horn walking into the water with the crow's eye and the thing above it. Excellent work by them. Definitely should check them out. There's Monaro Geek. It looked like they collabed a lot with like Alicia Kingston and a few of the other people on this list. Their recent ones was they did an Iron Bank stream, which I thought was really good, and they also did just a Let's Talk. It's called Let's Talk stream, and it's about the violence and the protesting out there. Definitely something to check out. There's the podcast Winterfell. They haven't been active, it looks like, in a while, but the last one they did was Kim Renfro about her book. There's Aquaventus, or Misty 306. Mostly a blog, it looked like, but she does a lot of theories and pop culture essays and book reviews. A lot of I was scrolling through it before us. Really good book reviews and theories and stuff like that, so I want to check out. And like in the chat, Sasuke said 1,000 Eyes in One podcast done by Tanya and Nikki. Looks like they've been mostly doing trivia for a little bit, but they also have been doing a season 8 rewatch review. So yep, that is by no means an all-inclusive list. That is not everybody. I'm sure there are plenty of others. Just wanted to run down, give some people some shout outs, some links. Oh, I guess people have been sending PayPals. Okay. $10 from Amy. Thank you for doing this, Matt. Really appreciate it. You're very welcome. Maura Lee also sent one. Maura, you're so you are so generous. $38 from her. Oh, that's probably after the weird numbers are probably because they took their cut, because this is, I guess I did this as a business. But yeah, so that's probably $40 from Morley and 10 from Amy. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, so definitely go out and support the Black and people of color creators in the community. A lot of them could use more attention than they get. I was going through and watching a bunch of them this week after Eliana and Chloe put up that list, and yeah, they deserve a lot more viewers. They do good stuff. All right, so let's go into Winterfell itself. Let's talk about that real big weird structure that's a looming part of the story. And I thought we would start with what it looks like today, because where it used to be and where it is now are very different things. You look at the histories and the legends and all that other kind of weird shit. Easier to start with the place we know, not the one of legend. So it's kind of like this big sprawling hodgepodge of buildings, architecture, and walls. Very often it's referred to as a maze. Oh, another one. Stephen Stark sent in $10. Thank you very much, Steven. Again, this is all, I'm going to give this all to charity after the stream's over. Yeah, very often described as a maze or like a big stone tree. It's a place that is made of stone and granite and all these things, but it very much feels alive. The outer walls are 80 and 100 feet high, separately, 2 giant ass walls with a moat in between made of gray granite. Not the infamous oily black stone. No oily black stone anywhere in Winterfell, so not one of the, doesn't seem to be linked to those other sites throughout Westeros that have that. Like you see at Moat Cailin, you see it at underneath the High Tower. When you think about these walls, it's very reminiscent of, you would think of Storm's End. I'm doing a video about Storm's End and Aegon and John Connington, and that's one thing that struck me when I was looking back at this, is how similar. Storm's End also has the 80-foot high curtain walls that nobody has ever climbed over. Although main difference is that Storm's End has never been sieged successfully or taken by force. Winterfell definitely has. Definitely has. The war between the Boltons and the Starks going back many years. It has been taken, it has been burned. It's been burned in the current story, although that was more by trickery than by like siege, but it's happened before. Storm's End is undefeated where Winterfell is not. It also kind of tells you what sort of insane invasions that Winterfell has seen over its lifetime, that these kind of fortifications are necessary. There's almost nothing like it anywhere else in Westeros. It's like Storm's End and Winterfell and the quote unquote wall, the wall, are these like enormous megalithic structures that are incredibly old, it seems like, and it's not really clear what they're for. Do they keep out magical things, or they keep out practical things? With Storm's End, it seems the stories of Storm's End are more legendary. It's keeping out the gods from during God's grief. Winterfell doesn't have that kind of similar legendary quality to them, but the effect on regular people tells you that these were not built just as like some sort of like they have a practical purpose, and the practical purpose has been probably being the source of the power for Winterfell and the Durandons for many years, that taking Winterfell is so insurmountable that it gives them an advantage that very few have. Now let me move this over. Let me double check on chat. Okay. It's also important to note that there are abandoned parts of Winterfell that are not used by anything or anyone. They are just sort of left as ruins within the high walls, which is something pretty interesting. You have the ruins of the first keep, which is the oldest structure in Winterfell. And then there's the broken tower, which is just a regular tower, but what ended up happening was it was struck by lightning, burned down, and they just never rebuilt it. The fortress is so big that apparently they have these 2 towers, and there's like, don't need to rebuild them, not necessary. It also serves as important like groundwork for thinking about Winterfell in terms of history and what it's related to. It's very similar to Harrenhal. It's also very similar to Asshai. These giant, enormous fortresses and complexes that have parts that have just been let go, that nobody does anything with them. Harrenhal was destroyed by the dragons, obviously. Who knows what happened to Asshai, but what's clear is that a fraction, not the whole of the place, is being used. And when we think about Harrenhal, that's obviously a very mystical, magical place with the God's Eyes. And then as you learn more about Winterfell and then Stark's connections to the Weirwoods and the Old Gods and maybe the others, kind of makes sense. George is setting it up so that when you think of Winterfell, you should think of magic, mystic, and weirdness, and also past destruction. Then we have the infamous glass gardens that have come up many times when people are talking about, like, where can you grow lemon trees? Well, the Winterfell has a greenhouse. That's what it is. They got the glass from Myr. It allows them to grow their famous blue winter roses and plants and crops all year long throughout winter, as long as there's sunlight. Very important, like, just survival thing, but also kind of a cool detail that the Starks do trade. They will buy stuff from Myr. They bought ice from the Valyrians, that kind of thing. Oh, another PayPal. $10 from Michelle. She says, great idea, hope others follow. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, again, this is a PayPal link so that YouTube doesn't take 40% of it, because I'm going to be donating all the money to charity for supporting protesters and that kind of stuff. Just kind of a cool detail. It's tells you a little bit about the Starks, that they are not like totally backward northerners that like live in this grim castle. No, it's alive, and they spend money to improve parts of it. And then there's a bunch of other towers. You have the Bell Tower, the Maester's Tower, a Rookery, a Library Tower, and a Guards Hall. Again, reminiscent of Harrenhal. A lot, and actually Moat Cailin, a lot of random towers to sort of plant just throughout the castle structure itself within the outer walls. I would guess that these towers used to be for defense, and over time, as the Starks conquered the north, they kind of fell out of use and they got repurposed. So one of them, like when they started having maesters, they just gave him a tower. Fine. When writing was a thing, because there was a time, because the first men mostly did runes, and they like carved them in stone. So at some point, like, paper writing came to the north, like through cultural exchange or technology, and they built a library. They probably just repurposed one of the old ones. You see that with the Night's Watch a lot. The Castle Black, whatever those towers used to be, that's not what they're used for now. They just kind of get repurposed. They're so old, who knows what they were even for. And outside the castles, we actually have the Winter Town. There's Winterfell and the Winter Town. This serves as more like the economic peasant level hub of Winterfell. It's where people come to trade. It's where people come to live, that aren't specifically within the castle garrison itself. It tends to pop up as winter is coming. Anybody in the north basically who feels threatened can come live in the Winter Town and get the protections of the Starks. This is a common thing anyway. It happens with a lot of the castles. Like Castle Rock has Lannisport, King's Landing has the Red Keep as King's Landing. It's pretty normal. There's the big fortress, and then there's the town or the city outside of it. White Harbor is a similar thing. The Winter Town, though, seems more temporary than the other ones. It seems to grow and contract as the seasons go on, rather than being a permanent city outside of it. Let's see what's going on in the chat. Yeah, Aaron, it is very sad when the glass gardens are broken by Ramsay. They will be very hard to replace. It doesn't seem... Well, they had to get it from Myr, and that's not awesome, trying to get more of it. Actually, Rosie says, should Diversity made a 3D model of the book Winterfell is gigantic and beautiful? Absolutely. Anybody can get the link for that. The show version of Winterfell versus the book version. The show version is actually much smaller, and it looks very different. Winterfell in the books is just like this enormous multi-acre structure with towers poking up everywhere, not the round forts that you see in the show. Yeah, Luminous Rand, it's more temporary because most of the north shelters there. Yeah, it comes and goes. Unlike, like I was saying, unlike the other cities or ports and that kind of thing where they are permanent structures, the Winter Town is more of like an emergency thing. And then, of course, there's the Godswood. This is an entire part of the castle that is cordoned off from the rest of it. It's an enclosed forest with the Winterfell Heart Tree, the Black Pool that sits just outside of it, where the tree is looking down into the water all the time, almost like a mirror or something like that. Reminds you of Galadriel and her magic mirror, that kind of thing. Her magic mirror made of water, where the Lords of Winterfell tend to go hang out to be on their own. Also the prey. We know from Bran's visions that it used to be more of an old god worshipping site, like people would be taken there to have their throats slit to water the trees. Also interesting that the Winterfell Godswood has a Stark face, which I always found very interesting, especially since, well, anyway. And then underneath the Godswood, next to the first keep, there is the infamous crypts, the enormous underground multi-level crypts where the bodies of House Stark are laid to rest. There's sort of a misconception that it's only the lords that are down there. All the members of House Stark are buried down in the crypts. It's only the lords, though, in theory, who get the statues. I have a whole section on the crypts. Don't worry about it. There's going to be a lot about the crypts in this stream. It's also, but because of its location within the first keep and underneath the Godswood, it's the crypts are actually sort of a secret. It's a plot point in A Dance with Dragons, where after the Boltons take Winterfell, that nobody can find the damn thing. They don't know where it is. It's actually a secret that Theon keeps to himself that he divulges to Lady Dustin. It appears that anyone left in Winterfell who knows is not giving up the location. The rest of the North doesn't know where it is. It's like this weird secret that the Starks keep to themselves, or at least the garrison plus the Starks all keep to themselves. Very fascinating how that works. You'd think with how big they are and how important they are to the Starks, that it would be like well known where they are. No. The crypts are a very strange secret that the Starks keep, which keeps in line with the fact that they are unique and odd and extremely weird. And then, of course, there's the Great Keep. This is the sort of the central fortress of Winterfell, the biggest building. Oh, that's right. I forgot about this. We got 158 watching, it looks like, right now. And if I get to 150 likes, I'll put on a silly hat. Probably, you guys can pick when we get there. It can be either the Gurm hat or it can be the Gandalf hat. I don't really care which. I would prefer the Gandalf hat because I feel less ridiculous wearing it. And then, okay, yeah, the Great Keep. This is where the Starks live. This is connected to the armory. This is where they spend their day-to-day time. In the early books, most of the action happens within the Great Keep. That's where the famous walkway is that they imported into the show, where you can watch the training yard. You know, it's their day-to-day location. And then there's the Great Hall. This is the scene for the feast. This is also, interestingly, it has oak and iron doors, which Dunk the Lunk repeats all the time and is apparently a saying all throughout Westeros. Oak and iron guard me well, or else I'm dead and doomed to hell. Interesting that the Starks of their great hall, have doors of oak and iron, and that phrase exists. Strange. Don't know what that's about. I'm sure it will come up, especially since Dunk has visited Winterfell during his lifetime and got busy with presumably young Nan. Seats 500. Not as big as Harrenhal, but again, like the comparison between Winterfell and Harrenhal continues to come up as you talk about the different ways it's built. It's almost like Harrenhal was supposed to be like a mega Winterfell. It almost seems like that's the inspiration for it, especially with the connections to the Weirwoods and all that other kind of stuff. And it's also within the Great Hall where the high seat of the Kings of Winter is. The show depicted it as just like sort of a simple wooden chair. It's actually just kind of a giant stone chair. It's decorated with direwolves on either side of it that has said to be worn smooth when it used to be sharp. That is how long that seat has been there. The butts of many lords have smoothed it out completely. Oh god, I have to keep track of the likes now. That's actually kind of hard to do. Up to 115. Okay. And then the last part of it is the sept for Catelyn Stark. Ned Stark built that very recently. It was a gift to her, being a Southerner and feeling totally out of place. Ned was trying to be kind to his wife, and seems to be the first Stark ever to allow a sept within anywhere near Winterfell, although one does exist at White Harbor and one exists at the Night's Watch. I imagine previous Stark Lords would be extremely upset to see a sept of the Faith of the Seven there, but there it is. It's there. So that's the Winterfell that we know at the start of the story. It's a crazy place. It's got so many different aspects to it. It's confusing to the people that live there. It's confusing to those that try and occupy it. There's secrets everywhere. Bran talks about it all the time, how he feels like he knows Winterfell where no one else can, because it doesn't just go below the ground, it goes above it. These towers and these walls are huge. It's, I mean, I'll just say it outright. It's a deep place. Very similar. Oh, we've got a few more PayPals. Sorry, I have to do this on my phone, so I have to pull them up one by one. Not as convenient as super chats, but better for what we're doing here. Let's see here. $5 from Danny McKay. Thank you very much, Danny. $10 from Jennifer. I'm trying to see, make sure there's no messages. Nope. And $10 from Sasa K. She says, thank you for doing this. No problem. Happy to. Yeah, H.P. Lovecraft, Labyrinths, the Stone City George's story about from the Thousand Worlds, all very, very connected. Winterfell is not like a fantasy castle in terms of like of King Arthur, but more the weirder side of fantasy. The part that Gurm loves so much. It could very easily be like a Lovecraft castle if you wanted to think about it that way. So that's where it is today. Let's look back to what it used to be, or the kind of legends and myths we get about it. So the official history, it's hard to have an official history with something that is between 5,000 and 10,000 years old. I mean, if you think about that in terms of modern storytelling, like us today, going back 5,000 years would be like the story of Gilgamesh and like the most ancient civilizations that we don't even know the names to. So anything here, take with a big grain of salt. It doesn't have to be correct. Gurm is probably just putting it in as he calls it like window dressing or decorating. But anyway, so let's talk about them, even though who knows if they're actually correct. It's supposedly built by Bran the Builder, the founder of House Stark, sort of the founder of House Stark. Brandon of the Bloody Blade apparently doesn't count. In the Dawn Age, with the help of the giants to raise the massive walls and buildings. Bran the Builder is also credited with building Storm's End for Durin's God's Grief, the High Tower for Uther Hightower, and also the wall itself, again with the help of the giants. Bran the Builder is also credited with giving Brandon's gift to the Night's Watch, that after he finished the wall, he then granted them all this land to work, implying that he split his land in half for the wall, basically, that it was his land, he built it on, and then he gave it away. There's also this interesting consistent theme we're seeing of the giants being involved with Bran the Builder and creating these megalithic structures in the north. I think it's supposed to like tune into this idea that Bran was using help from weird magical things in order to build these structures, which is sort of goes into like nobody knows how he did it. but it doesn't really translate to the current times well. Like Harrenhal is much bigger than Winterfell. And how did Harrenhal do it? Well, he didn't do it with magic. He did it with mass slavery and just like sapping the resources of 2 whole kingdoms for like 50 years in order to build his massive castle. So yeah, I mean, these things can be built in the modern times, but that, as old as Winterfell is and as old as Bran the Builder is, at the time it would have seemed like magic. Nobody knows how he did it. Storm's End as well basically seems to be unchanged since its construction. I think it's more that he was getting aid from the Children of the Forest. That's what the meaning of the giants and all that stuff really is. It almost seems like he's kind of like a Prometheus figure from Greek legend, that he stole secrets from the Children of the Forest and the giants and used it to help out humanity with his building of these amazing things that nobody else could replicate for thousands of years. I'm guessing that's the purpose of that detail. I mean, he may have actually gotten giants to help him, but that's not necessary. And then we look at I described what the buildings are now, but if it's noted in the text that the architecture between the different buildings changes wildly. There is many different generations of building materials going on and styles of building, including like the gargoyles are one thing that's noted. So Winterfell was not built as one whole like Harrenhal was, or it seems like Storm's End is. It was much smaller and then got bigger over time. And then we look at the oldest parts. Well, there's 3 parts. What we know about the 3 oldest parts of Winterfell are the crypts, the First Keep, and the Godswood. Those are the 3 things that are consistently brought up as the oldest parts. So if you think about it, you could probably imagine that that's what it was based around, that everything else is built up around it. Isabel wants to know, is Bran the Builder an earthbender? You know what? Not that bad. Hang on a second. Checking PayPal and my Twitter. Checking PayPal too. This is why I don't normally do this, because everything just pops up normally. Yeah, so if you imagine what Winterfell was at its inception, what it was like when Bran the Builder built it, the evidence suggests that it was 1 tower, the crypts beneath it, and the Godswood. And that's basically all it was, which tracks with what we know about the Starks at the time. For a long time, they were just like another of 100 petty kings throughout the north, that over time they conquered their neighbors and gained power in a very long struggle, especially against the Boltons. They used to be nobodies. I mean, compared to what they are now. It's interesting to think about that there was a time when, like, it was like, if you think about Dunk and Egg and you think about, what's his name? It's from the Sworn Sword. The Osgray and Standfast. It may have been something like Standfast when it was initially constructed. Just a tower, a tree, and some caves underneath it. It's also noted, like I said in the opening quote, that the hills and ravines around it were not leveled. That is something that normally happens with castle construction these days, or at least in the more modern times throughout Westeros, that you don't want to build around hills or anything like that unless it's like a defensive structure. Like if you want to put the back of your castle to a hill, that kind of thing. But most of the time they level the ground and then they build up. Winterfell was absolutely not built like that. It was built around the land, and they didn't use any kind of earthwork to do it. They didn't destroy the caves. They didn't destroy the hills or anything like that for superior defensive structures. They built it into the land. it seems to maybe imply a certain respect that Bran, the builder, and whoever it actually was that built these structures, that they respected the land. They respected probably like the old gods and the children of the forest, and they didn't want to destroy them. It also may indicate that that used to be a maybe a holy site, something like we see from the God's Eye, or something like High Heart, that it may be built on top of one of these places. Jeff's says, how much of the help from the giants have been skin changing them to do so? Yeah, that's also something that may have come up. Yeah, skin changing giants or pack animals in order to do it. It could also be something along those lines. But when we look at these ancient structures, like you think about the 100-foot walls and the 80-foot wall and a moat and like 5 towers, but that's not what it was. You didn't need godlike powers to build what Winterfell used to be. It's probably just something that has been built up over time. And then it's also important to note that underneath these oldest parts of the castle is the hot springs and the crypts. In the modern times, the springs have been repurposed. They've sort of been used as like plumbing, heating all the walls, running throughout the buildings. So this also indicates that this was an important strategic place for them. Like getting hot springs in the north when winters can be fierce and years long is very important. Gives you a water source all years long, when you don't, like, so you don't have to like use a fire to melt snow to get water or anything like that. It's an important natural resource that nobody else has. It's an advantage throughout for thousands of years that they've had. So yeah, that it's fun to think about that. What's Winterfell? It's actually just a tower, the crypts, and weirwoods and a hot spring. And they said, okay, this is where we're setting up. And this also goes into the idea I was talking about with the walls, the idea that Bran is building the structure is basically the massiveness of it, the 80 and 100-foot curtain wall with the moat in between. When you look at the other places he builds, they also have similar insane structures. The wall itself is 700 feet high and like hundreds of miles long across. The high tower is far and away the tallest structure in Westeros, going up, I don't even know how far, but it seems almost impossible with current building methods. Storm's End also has those 80-foot walls that nobody can breach, also built on Shipbreaker Bay. That sort of seems to be the connective tissue between them, that it's the size of these massive walls around Winterfell that connects them to Bran the Builder. However, when you look at, oh god, we haven't actually gotten, okay, at 131 likes, okay, good, I don't have to get my hat yet. You guys scared me for a second there. I was reading the chat. But like I was talking about with the most ancient parts of these structures, that only represents like a quarter of the current walls that Winterfell encloses. Like that is a small corner off in the side. So it asks the question, were those gates always there? Or was there another wall around the original Winterfell that then got expanded to enclose other parts of it? Do not, Bernie, do not send me a sombrero. What are you doing? $20 from Aaron M on PayPal. Thank you very much, Aaron. Courtney Maza, one of my mods, also sent in $10. Message with it. I would like to make this donation in the protesters in the name of our dear friend Robert. I like to think of him I'll be thinking of him at 5 when I take my kids to demonstrate. Oh, go get him. Go protest them. So far, we've gotten $120 that I'll be donating. I won't be keeping any of it. PayPal is taking its cut. That's why the numbers are slightly lower. All of it will be given away to a charity after the stream. Let me just post that link again, in case any of y'all missed it. And this, yeah, again, this is just to not give YouTube their 40%. Otherwise, I would say to send in super chats, but that's kind of self-defeating when we're trying to give it away. Oh, there was a joke, Courtney? I'm sorry, I'm stupid. Yeah, so getting back to were the walls already always there, it seems like maybe not. It seems like that those curtain walls and those moats were later additions as Winterfell got bigger. And that sort of raises a few possibilities. So, number one, was Winterfell originally a much larger structure that has been knocked down and rebuilt over time? Maybe the first keep wasn't just one building at first. Maybe it was a part of a larger structure that has since been destroyed and rebuilt over. I would guess not, but that is a possibility. I like the second one, that Winterfell has expanded over time, and that with the existence of the Wintertown being sort of a non-permanent part of the structure, maybe what we know as the rest of Winterfell was actually let me say this again. So if you take the first keep, the Cripts and the Godswood, and say that's the original Winterfell, maybe the rest of the castle was the Wintertown that sprung up around it and built up over time. And then once it became more functionally a part of the castle, they built the walls around the whole thing, enclosing Winterfell and Wintertown, and then the new Wintertown sprung up outside. Oh, I remember. Sorry. I remember Robert. Yes, I remember that Robert guy. Don't worry about it. Inside joke from the from my patron Slack. That would be my idea for why these walls enclose everything, but they enclose everything that has been built later. I would say that was that seems most likely to me, but it could also be the other way. It could be that the different parts of it have fallen down over time and been rebuilt. Oh, Steven Stark wants to know where I'm going to be sending the money. There's a thing called the Mutual Aid Networks. I had given the other money to help people get out of bail, but there's a lot of other places that need money and resources. So I was gonna pick one and send it to it. Maybe the Massachusetts one, because I live in Massachusetts, but maybe somewhere that needs it more at the moment. Massachusetts does not seem to be having the same different kinds of problems. No, not my bank account. I'll post it on Twitter so you guys can see the receipt and everything after we're done. So even if the walls weren't like original part of the structure, there's something that is linking Bran the Builder's original creations. When you're talking about Storm's End, you're talking about the High Tower, you're talking about the Wall, and you're talking about Winterfell, and that is the seeming idea of some sort of magic or barriers that is innate in them. The Wall obviously has some sort of idea to keep the undead out. Cold Hand says he cannot go through the wall. There's the whites that go through when the Night's Watch bring them through, but it may be like an invitation thing, like a vampire thing where they can't pass unless you invite them in. We're at 144 likes. Oh god, and it's gonna be a long time with that hat on. Oh, what was I saying? Oh, yes. We know that the wall itself also has the black gate underneath, some weird magic shit going on there. Storm's End, Melisandre could not send a shadow baby from outside the walls into the walls. So that again goes into this idea of magic and barriers, that somehow within the walls of Storm's End, there's some kind of ward that keeps magic out. But once you walk it inside, then it works. Oh, awesome. I have to go get my hat now. We are at 153 likes, 182 watching. Oh, Pay no attention to the sound of... Thanks, guys. On the plus side, what this does is it covers my quarantine hair, which makes me look like I'm in college again. My super long... Oh. There we go. You guys happy? Let me get side to side. There we go. Yeah, if we get to if we get to 200, because I don't like wearing the Gurm hat, we get to 200, I'll put it on. Yeah, those are Guilty Undertaker. Are those the beer bottles in the background? They are. They are the Oma Gang beers. I have a whole collection up there. I'm missing only a few different stickers, that kind of thing. God damn this hat. Well, I'm glad you guys organized for making me look foolish. And then the high tower, it's unclear what kind of magic is there, but it definitely isn't impossibly tall. Like, even making something like that close to modern times was basically impossible. So what's holding it up? It was built on top of Battle Isle, which has the oily black stone that's not present at Winterfell and not present at Storm's End and not present at the Wall, but is present there. There's some sort of magical stuff going on there. It's also noted that the Lords of the High Tower seem to be necromancers and very interested in magic. The Citadel was founded to study magic itself. So that asks the question, okay, so we know these kind of things exist in other places. Do they exist in Winterfell? I think that would be an interesting question as we go into the Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring, as the others break through the wall and they start marching down. Is there a similar shield underneath the big walls of Winterfell? Or, this is the other possibility, are only parts of the castle shielded? Like, is it only the original parts? Is it only the first keep, the crypts, and the Godswood that have this kind of magical barrier that that magical beings cannot get through without being invited? That could be a way that Gurm could allow Winterfell to be like partially overrun and destroyed and create this sort of like Thermopylae idea that was sort of present in the show with Theon and Bran, where the rest of the castle kind of got wrecked, but it was the Godswood and the crypts where the humans sort of put up their last stand. It would be kind of foolish of the Starks to essentially build a giant crypt full of their dead, knowing the others exist and not having some way of stopping the others from getting inside. Like, that would seem like a bad idea to me. Oh, on the high towers. Actually, since you sent in a donation for the charity, I'll just take this as a super chat question. Sasuke says, if there are necromancers, then Qyburn be somehow related to them? I never thought about this. Necromancy is absolutely a part of the magic of the world. Like, everybody seems to have some form of necromancy going on. Like, the others have theirs, the Faithful Lore have theirs, the Undying have theirs, the Children of the Forest have sort of an undeath with Bloodraven and sticking in the trees. It's a constant theme. It's one of those things that I think about with Euron coming to Old Town in the Winds of Winter and blowing the Horn of Winter. I like to think the Horn of Winter will raise the dead, that it's not going to knock down the wall. And it'd be kind of funny, well, not funny, it'd probably be terrifying in a Gurm way, that if all the bodies in Old Town all raised at once. But yeah, it's definitely noted that the Citadel and the High Towers were at one time studying necromancy, and then it got outlawed. So necromancers in Old Town, think about that. That is a weird one. yeah, it would be an interesting idea if in the Winds of Winter, as the others attack, if everything else got overrun and it was just these few places in Winterfell that maybe have this original protection like you see from Storm's End, but that also for that to work, you'd have to assume that those giant walls outside were built later. So they kind of go hand in hand. If you think Winterfell used to be much smaller, then that's a possibility. If not, then it would probably be the whole walls. And the other thing about the ancient parts of Winterfell's origins, not only the connections to the Children of the Forest through Bran, the idea of like calling giants, that kind of thing. When you think about the crypts and the hill and the weirwood heart tree on top of it, then does that not remind you of the Children of the Forest cave structures we know? I mean, absolutely it should. Bloodraven's cave, and if you have this in your mind, what the original Winterfell looked like, seem almost identical. It's just that now there's a tower on top. There's also High Heart. There's the Weirwood Cave that Beric Dondarrion and the Brotherhood Without Banners call their home. There's the Rainwood Caves. Also implies that maybe there's a cave structure underneath the God's Eye. So it could be very likely that Winterfell is built in the way it is because it was built on top of an ancient Children of the Forest like city or cave structure, either by force or maybe cooperation. The story seemed to imply it was cooperation, but knowing the old Starks and how they were not awesome people, it may have been taken by force. Again, like the Prometheus idea. Justin Chisholm says, wonder if the anti-magic has to do with weirwood roots. That is another point. There are weirwoods at all 4 sites Bran the Builder supposedly built. I mean, there's obviously the Winterfell Godswood. There's the grove out on the north side of the wall from Castle Black, but there's also... Oh, wow. There's a thunderstorm coming in right now. That's really loud. Apparently the gods do not like me talking about their secrets. Also, I'm hoping doesn't mean I will lose power. If I do, sorry about that. Wow. Yeah, the Storm Gods are unhappy about this. I'm revealing their secrets. Yeah, the Black Gate. So, Storm's End has its own Godswood. The High Tower itself does not have a weirwood, but there is one present at the Citadel, which is not that far away from it. So there's definitely a connection between the weirwoods and probably these barriers that are happening. When we see in Bloodraven's cave, it's more explicit, where like the dead literally cannot walk in. It's probably the weirwood doing it. So it would make sense if maybe like the walls were built at Winterfell, not in like a planned way. Maybe the walls are the outline of the barrier that the weirwood provides. That would be kind of cool. That seems to me to be the more likely conclusion, that the building of these fortresses was aided by the Children of the Forest and built around weirwoods, maybe taking Children of the Forest settlements in order to build them. Which would be very First Men. That would be something they would do. Cooperation or conquest, one or the two, maybe a mixture of them. So we're an hour in. Again, I wanted to remind everybody, if you want to donate to the stream, if you want to do super chats, I'm instead asking that you send them. You can donate directly to anywhere you want and then post in the chat that you did it, or tag me on Twitter with the receipt or something like that, or you can send them to this PayPal link. And the main reason for doing this is to help out the protesters and the people out there that are struggling against all the... Wow, my voice just cracked. That's weird. Struggling against police brutality and all that kind of stuff. All the revenues from the stream. That sounded close. That sounded really close. Yeah, so let's talk about the crypts themselves. Also, you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/JoeMagician. You get access to the Patreon Slack. You get access to like exclusive art. My patrons are able to see are able to follow on the outline. I posted that just before we went live. The Patreon Slack, I think I mentioned that. I'll have a video coming out this week talking about Storm's End itself, which is kind of where this came from. I was thinking about ancient castles and all that other kind of stuff. Patrons will be able to see that early. But yeah, so the crypts, they are fascinating. They are a fascinating part of the story. Okay. So I also wanted to mention that I don't know if you guys know the podcast Drinks and Knows Things. One of their members, Abby, her husband recently passed, and they have a GoFundMe up. If you guys want to help her out in her time of need, they put up a goal of 5,000, but they're up to 26,000 already. Drinks and Knows Things are a fine part of the community. It'd be nice if everybody could also help them out. Yeah, so sorry, there's thunderbolts, lightning, stuff like donations coming through. $20 from Crowfood's daughter. Thank you very much, Amanda. That puts us up to 140. Okay, so fact one about the crypts that is so weird and fascinating. They get older as you go down. Okay? They get older the deeper in ground you go, which is strange because it's a lot harder to build down. Like, excavating that far is incredibly difficult, especially in these ancient times when they didn't even do the earthwork to remove the hills or flatten the land. For some reason, there's these multi-level cave structures underneath Winterfell, and they started burying people at the bottom. They buried them at the bottom. Most of the time, with like labyrinths or mausoleums or crypts or that kind of thing, there's generally like one level, and they just sort of spread out horizontally as they can, or they build stuff above ground, or they clear them out over time. Instead, the Starks, for unknown reasons, have an upwards building crypt that is massive, that is truly huge. It has space for every single lord that has ever been a part of Winterfell, and they're still going. It's almost like this it almost seems like a countdown, where it's like, what happens when it adds attention to it. It's noted that the crypts are almost full. Okay, so then what happens when they're full? Because they're almost at the surface. Is it like a magical spell sort of thing? Is it like a ritual? Is it just like a thematic thing for George telling you that maybe the Starks are ending? That kind of thing. But it's definitely a very, very, or perhaps maybe telling us that the dead are getting closer and closer to the surface. I wonder why George would do that. Why, in a story with tons of necromancers, he would put in this idea that the Stark dead over time are slowly getting closer to escaping from the earth. I don't know why he would do that. I mean, could be anything, really. Wheezy Squeezebot says, how the Starks know how deep to dig? Yeah, a great question. Is it an accident? Because it doesn't seem that way, because the Starks are destroyed now as they have more than they have ever been, and yet the crypts are also running out. It's very strange. This is a unique, actually unique thing in Westeros. There's nothing else like it. The only thing that's close is the Lannisters of Cashley Rock also have this kind of crypt structure in the in the stone vaults of deep in the mountain. There's also the barrows in Barrowton, but they're not built like this. Nowhere. And also, interestingly, the only other place where there are some kind of crypts are basically, like I said, it's Casterly Rock. Casterly Rock was a Children of the Forest city before stolen by the Casterlys, before stolen by the Lannisters. So I would say definitely that the Starks did not build upwards. There was a cave structure already down there, something like Bloodraven's Cave maybe, that they have adapted to bury their dead. Especially because if you think about it, as Bran is going through the Weirwood going through Bloodraven's Cave, he sees the Green Seers kind of. Oh yes, Guilty Undertaker says the Targaryens and the Free Folk both burn their dead. The Starks do not burn their dead; they bury them, knowing necromancers exist. Weird. Hang on. Probably easier if I had this up on a screen or something like that. But yeah, I got 204 going. If we get 165 likes, we get to 200. I'll put on the Germ hat, which I hate and I don't want to do, but I will do it for you guys. Oh, thanks for coming, Amanda. Good to see you. Yeah, nobody buries their dead like this. It seems almost certain that this is a Children of the Forest cave system that's been adapted. Like I was saying, with the way the Green Seers in Bloodraven's Cave are hooked up to the trees, you can almost maybe see that as like the crypts as a human version of that, where they exist in some form of place between life and death, connected to the Weirwoods. I've speculated in the past that I wonder if the sepulchres where the bodies actually are buried behind the statues, maybe Weirwoods have gotten in there. That would be fascinating. Yeah, it seems very likely. I'm just going to get to this right now. This was next on my doc. It happens to come up. Talking about the statues and the bones. Again, the statues are a unique feature of the crypts. It's said that every lord who has ever ruled Winterfell has a statue. Except... That's another lightning bolt. Except for a... 3 people. There are 3 people that have statues that are not lords. They are Lyanna Stark, Brandon Stark, and Artos Stark the Implacable. Brandon is the closest to a technicality because when Aerys killed his father, there was a brief moment after Rickard died from the flames in the armor from the wildfire, and Brandon was still alive, and then the device strangled him. So I guess you could say, like, I guess Brandon was Lord for a few minutes. That doesn't seem right. He was never actually the Lord of Winterfell. And then there's Artos the Implacable, who was he essentially served as kind of like a regent for Willem Stark. He ended up fighting off yeah, I'm just gonna double check this. I think he fought off the Wildling invasion against Raymond Redbeard. Yes. Willem Stark called his banners march north. Artos went with them during the Battle of Long Lake. Willem was killed. Artos killed Raymond himself. So he was never Lord of Winterfell, but his intense service to the Stark family got him a statue when nobody else has them. Although with the length of time that these statues have been being built, who knows if any of all of them are actually lords. Like, it's 5,000 years of history. Who knows? Very odd that they do it. And there's also this odd detail that we get from the Stark children, that these crypts are not a solemn, weird place that they never go. It's not grim or anything like that. This is a place that the Stark children for generations will go to and like run and play and play jokes on each other. This is where we get the infamous Jon jumping out covered in flour looking like a ghost to scare Sansa, the story from when they were kids. The Stark children, for some reason, view these giant spooky crypts full of staring statue lords as comfortable. They view it as a normal part of their lives, and that is unusual in Westeros, that this comfort with death and this comfort with being around a graveyard, basically. Yeah, it really tells you a little bit about their relationship to the crypts and their history, and maybe their connections with those scary ice necromancers to the north, that death for them and being around essentially the corpses of their ancestors is just a normal thing for them. Another odd part of the crypts. And then of course we get the statues themselves. So the statues are the Kings of Winter. The show had them all standing up, but essentially the statues are they sit in the throne of Winterfell, hang on a second, let me double check this. I'm pretty sure they are sitting in a throne, a mirror of the one in the Great Keep, with a direwolf around their feet and a real iron sword or a steel sword laid across their laps. Over and over and over again, these statues are mentioned as being alive, that characters, when they are down there, feel like they're being watched, felt like they're being judged, that they are not alone, that these statues are alive. This is extremely similar to language that we get about the weirwoods, where it feels like a lot of times the weirwoods are almost like paused in motion, where I talked about this a while back, but it was like almost like a death mask idea. Their faces are frozen, their limbs are like arms that are moving. It's the same thing for these statues. They are everyone thinks they're alive, everyone thinks they're watching. Like that's not abnormal. That does happen elsewhere in the world, where people walk by statues of dead people and think like, oh well, maybe they're watching. But it is unusual in the Winterfell crypts how everyone feels that way. It is omnipresent. And then with Jon's dreams, it becomes real. When Jon dreams that he goes down there and he yells that this is not his place, that he's not a Stark, the statues actually do like turn their heads and look at him and talk and do all these weird things. And for some reason in dreams, which again links back to the Children of the Forest, who have the ability to look into dreams, it seems like Bloodraven does to Bran. It's almost like there's something in the crypts that is reaching out as well. Maybe something connected to the old gods or some sort of similar function. It's also the idea that the sword across the lap is a denial of guest right. Actually, I saw this in the chat. Somebody else brought it up. Let me see here. Yes, Jess brought it up. Yeah, denying guest right. For some reason, all these statues are posed as lords. Like they are in the throne of Winterfell. They have a direwolf at their foot, echoing the idea that they have been historically wargs, but they're denying guest right to everyone that walks in. But not the Starks, because the Starks feel totally comfortable down there. It's like an outsider sort of thing. When you see other statues, they're usually posed in some way that reflects the person or something personal. That's not what's happening with the statues in Winterfell. They are saying everyone else get out, with open steel. This comes up with Robb and Tyrion, when Robb is standing in for Ned when he goes south, where Tyrion sees the naked blade on Robb's lap and says like, oh, you're saying you're about to kill me. Well, why would statues be about to kill you? Interesting question. Oh, well, that was not a PayPal donation. Just got a new Patreon. Yeah. Kate, $10. Thank you so much, Kate. Yeah, with like I was talking about with season 8 and how the dead rise, the foreshadowing is as consistent and total that I think the dead will rise at some point during the war against the others. That seems almost certain. It is too consistently put in. The interesting part will be, like I was talking about earlier, is there some barrier that would stop the others that will be broken in order to make that happen? That would be a fascinating thing. But it also, like I was saying, this also links the idea that the old gods and the Starks have this relationship. The direwolves say they are skin changers. They are wargs. The way they are sitting in their thrones and the how close they are to the weirwoods reminds you of greenseers. The idea that they don't burn their dead, that their dead are still there ready to be necromancers, reminds you of the others. It's a very fascinating idea. Hang on, there's a... Oh, people are pointing out in the chat that people do walk through cemeteries, that they aren't always grim. That is true. That is a thing. Like, you can walk through the National Cemetery at Arlington in Washington, D.C., and it's a solemn place. Like, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers is like that. A lot of Americans on the East Coast probably went there for like a middle school trip. But yeah, not all graveyards are spooky. Some people do like them. It's odd, though, that all the Starks like the crypts, that all the Starks are totally okay with it. Unusual. And yeah, combined with the statues and that these bodies are available, these connections to the old gods and the children of the forest, it seems like Winterfell is sort of like a petrified weirwood, or like a petrified or a human version of a Children of the Forest city. That this is their understanding of what the Children of the Forest do, or what used to be there. So actually, wow, good timing. Laura7Ann has bring up a question I was about to get to. So what is hidden in the crypts? It's noted that the crypts, you cannot access all of them, that there's actually a cave-in, and the lower levels are cut off. Nobody has re-excavated it. Nobody goes down there. A lot of the names of these lords are lost. The swords have essentially rusted away, but there's more to access that nobody can get to right now. And the question is, so you have this weird crypt structure that's very deep, that goes even deeper, and part of it's cut off. So what's behind the cut off part? I mean, the simple answer is that it's just it is just more crypts. It is just more statues down there, and there's nothing down there. That the cave-in is just a red herring or something like that. And George isn't going to do anything with it. I find that boring. So there's quite a lot of theories about what might be behind the caved-in part of the crypts. One thing that comes up is the hot spring source. It's said from the locals at in the Wintertown in Winterfell that they think that the hot springs are generated by a dragon, that there is a dragon down there that is breathing fire on the water source, and that's what's down there. Like, it doesn't have to be a real dragon. Like, dragons breathing up from the earth is a normal idea for what volcanism, a way to understand it. But maybe there's like dragon eggs down there. Maybe there is something like that. Some sort of, what is the heat source underneath the Winterfell? Is there like a volcano waiting to erupt, or maybe there is a dragon? Who knows? I mean, it's a fantasy world. George could do whatever he wants, but I would suspect it is mentioned that that is something you should think about, like what's down there, maybe the source of this heat. Okay. There's also a vision where Bran is in he's in Summer's body, and then as Winterfell burns, he sees a dragon escape. So that is definitely something. And when we're talking about, if you want to think about it in terms of the story non-literally, there is a dragon buried in Winterfell. It's Jon Snow, the Stark and Targaryen, hidden behind a cave-in, basically hidden by Winterfell. There is a dragon there. Okay, so that could be what that is about. It doesn't have to be a literal thing down there. Another possibility is like, what if there's something like the Black Gate? I mean, nobody knew the Black Gate was there. It is one of the weirdest parts of A Song of Ice and Fire, and it's equally as weird as Winterfell and the Cripts. Maybe there is another weirwood face down there that is like some sort of vault or some sort of secret behind it. This goes into a similar possibility that people wonder if this is a Children of the Forest cave structure, maybe it connects to the rest of them. Maybe there is a Black Gate or something like that behind the cave-in that would allow you to go from the Winterfell caves into the rest of the cave structures, which seem to go all throughout Westeros itself. I mean, there's Gorn's Way that goes underneath the wall, that seemingly goes by, that completely bypasses the wall's defenses. There's also, what is it? There's an idea at the God's Eye that it's super deep, and that maybe there's like an underground water source. Definitely beneath Bloodraven's cave, it's been noted that there are actually underground rivers down there. So maybe there's some sort of giant ancient cave structure that goes all the way around the north, and the Winterfell is one of the exits that has been blocked off. A Black Gate would be super interesting. I don't know if it'll ever come up because nobody's really interested in the crypts, you know? Nobody's interested in like getting behind that part. You just know it exists. I think it's Theon that brings it up, which tells you that Theon has also explored. And also, it looks like this is a thing to think about in terms of how the Starks view Theon. Theon has been allowed in the crypts. He knows where it is. It's an important plot point that everyone, when he's in Winterfell as Reek, is trying to convince him to give up this location. So there actually was quite a lot of trust in Theon that they brought him to this place and showed him it. And then, there's one more idea that I'm not the only one to think of this. This is something that people have thought of before. It's the idea that that maybe there is some kind of monster or some kind of ancient being that is trapped down there, similar to like you see from like a Bloodraven or the Undying. Something that should have died long ago but has not. So perhaps the legend of the Night's Queen, maybe she is trapped down there. Maybe that is maybe a kidnapping of the only female other we've ever heard of, is the secret of how the Starks ended the Long Night, that they have her down there. That would be super interesting. Like maybe the Night King is down there. Maybe that's where they took his body after Brandon the Breaker and I think Jorman came together to depose the Night King from the Night Fort. Like, what happened to his body afterwards? Did he die? If he did die, what did they do with it? Well, maybe they buried it. Maybe they buried it in the Stark crypts out of like shame or something like that, because it's said that the Night King was a Stark. That's what Old Nan tells us. Like their deep dark secret. And it doesn't even have to be like a literal thing. It doesn't have to be a body, and there doesn't have to be like some magical being down there. Maybe it is just literally like a secret buried in the deep crypts, like the connection between the Starks and the others, the connection between the Starks and the Children of the Forest, because there has been a consistent idea throughout time where the Starks have been sort of burying their history in a real way, where the benevolent, well, not always benevolent, but the the Starks that care for the North and care for their bannermen and take care of the common people is not what they always were like. They were, Maester Luwin says they used to be hard men for hard times. We know they spent thousands of years conquering the North. If there's some sort of connection to that and like a burying of history idea, that would make sense. Also, whatever connection there is between the Kings of Winter and the King of Winter and the Night's King, that the Night's King was a Stark from Old Nan's story, that would make a lot of sense. It's also this idea that the Winterfell itself is presented as like a maze or a labyrinth, and that's an idea that has been consistent throughout like real life myths and legends, that you build mazes and labyrinths to essentially it's been used to keep like evil things inside of it, like the Minotaur of Crete. The labyrinth was built to keep it confused, to keep it from escaping. It's a prison in another form. Oh, yeah, we got 207 people watching right now, 182 likes. 200 we put on the Gurm hat that I don't like. We got a half hour to go. Also, after this, at 5 o'clock, Radio Westeros goes live. I forget what their topic is this week, but definitely interesting. There's also quite a lot of John H. I'm not going to try and pronounce that. There's also the idea that Bael the Bard and the Stark daughter lived out there for a year. If there's a way out, then that would make sense. There's definitely an idea that the Starks and secrets can live down in those crypts where no one else can, that there's something strange going on. People have wondered if maybe there's a nearby cave entrance that used to connect, like it was their back door out of the structure if they ever got sieged. That would make sense too, and maybe the cave-in was to stop that from being an option during sieges, because as we know, the Starks did get Winterfell has been captured before, it has been sacked, it has been burned. So if there was a secret way in and that secret way was discovered and that's how it was invaded and sacked, then yeah, you would probably close that up. If you want the most like practical reason why you would close off these crypts. I think I was gonna do some got a half hour to go. I think we would do I'll take some questions. We'll spend the last hour just answering questions about this kind of stuff. I got a few here from my patron Slack. Amanda Crowfood's daughter, she wanted to talk about the burning of the library. I covered most of the other parts. That is something that's very interesting when you're talking about a loss of knowledge and the burning of books that seems likely to happen at the Citadel, and the loss of them with Maester Aemon losing his sight. Winterfell is one of these places that has, it's not a giant library, but it's a library where it's said rare and unique books live. That Tyrion was fascinated by the library. He took a few volumes with him, and the burning of the library could be sort of a way that George allows things to get worse when they didn't have to. Like if there was a book in there about the others, if there was a book in there about how to stop them, or some sort of more magical idea that was lost. The library itself was not burned on purpose. Luminous Rain says, John says it's small at the wall. It's small but unique, or has rare volumes you can't find anywhere else, except maybe at Castle Black. The library was burned as a diversion to try and kill Bran, which is an interesting idea that that Bran's existence is causing a loss of ancient knowledge. Yeah, the Winterfell library, I would love to see what books are there. In my my Maester Aemon theories I posted on the channel, the Aemon the Dreamer, the Aemon the Dreamer one in particular, I talked about how maybe a reason that Aemon went north was to get access to Winterfell and Castle Black because Septon Barth went there as well. That there was a sort of a following a stream of knowledge, trying to find these ancient secrets that no one else has, which Aemon and characters like Bloodraven are definitely tuned into. Like, did Aemon ever borrow a copy of a book from Winterfell while he was up at the wall? He could have. Bloodraven, maybe. That could be interesting. It's definitely an idea that there has been knowledge that could stop the others that has been lost over time, or is buried in somewhere that maybe only someone like Samwell Tarly would be able to find. That's something I would very interested going into Wind's Winter, especially with the Citadel seemingly under threat by Euron. A question here from Steven Stark. He wanted to know, why does Winterfell need such defenses along with what looks like magical ones? Yeah, why do you need two sets of walls 100 feet tall, 80 feet tall with a moat in between? Yeah, that is a good question. We know that the Starks are one of the more warlike families, or were in the past, that they had thousands of years of conquest subduing their neighbors, and that the Boltons were their primary enemy for most of that time. We know that the Boltons did take Winterfell in the past. I would suspect that if the walls weren't actually built by Bran the Builder, that they were built later in response to the Bolton threats, that as their feud got worse, as the wars became more destructive, that they just kept like amping up their defenses. Like, after being sacked once, maybe the 100-foot wall went up. They got sacked again, maybe the moat went up, and then the 80-foot wall after that. It's a practical problem. The Durndons for thousands of years were able to use not only those giant walls they have, but also Shipbreaker Bay as a way to stop sieges and outlast them. But Winterfell is exposed on all sides. It has, the only thing that protects it is kind of the Wolf's Wood, but that is not the same kind of barrier as a giant bay that you cannot sail ships into is. So I would guess that these increased defenses are responding to a practical threat and not a magical one, because like these kind of walls, they don't stop people from invading your dreams. It's unclear if they would even stop like zombies from climbing up them or giants from trying to break them down. Those walls seem to be there to stop men, I would guess. It's the idea of modern Winterfell versus like a historical Winterfell. What came first? When was it built? In what order? That's a question that George wants you to think about as he is describing this, because he keeps putting through these ideas. Although we know that the current Winterfell, it was sacked not by overwhelming force, not by a siege, but by trickery. That Ramsay Bolton's gambit essentially allowed them to open the walls for somebody that they should not have, and that's how it ended up being taken. It's like a similar thing with Storm's End, when John Connaughton says, when he's asked, how are you going to take this unstoppable castle, this castle nobody can break into, and he says, by guile. So it removes kind of a certain kind of threat, but doesn't remove the threat entirely. Yeah, good question there from Steven. But you do see a similar thing at Moat Cailin, where it uses a giant ridge and also the swamps around it in order to be the main barriers. It uses the natural defenses, and that is something that Winterfell does not really have. Linda Smith asked, do you think Egg maybe borrowed books from the Winterfell library similar to Tyrion? I would guess Aemon did when he was a maester, but I mean, it's possible that when the She-Wolves and Winterfell rolls around, that perhaps Egg does go up to the library and pulls some for his brother, saying like, oh, he would like this, and like a gift from the Lord of Winterfell. That would actually be a really interesting way to connect Duncan Egg to Aemon in the current timeline. That what if it was like a book from Winterfell that Egg brought back for him that got him thinking about these larger themes. It wouldn't be for Aerys, I don't think. Aerys was already invested in the higher mysteries, but it could definitely be something for Aemon. This was one from my patron Slack, Bernie, who's in the chat. She thought the crypts were collapsed on grayscale victims, and that's why there are stone Starks. That is certainly a theory, Bernie. But, grayscale has been a thing for a long time. The stone men and the stone statues that move, there's definitely a connection there with their names and the ideas behind them. The ideas that the stone men eventually like freeze in place. We saw that from Euron, the brother he killed, the first one. He had essentially been paralyzed, and Euron just sort of pinched his nose. You could also see that as kind of like a stone statue sort of thing. Those kind of sealed burials often are for like disease sort of things that. So like the sepulchres they're buried in, that would be interesting if that's like where the tradition started. That's one of those things I love thinking about, like, why did you start doing that? Like, why would you start building these statues? Why would you start building down up? Why would you put them in sepulchres rather than burning them like everyone else does? It's that is a curious question. All right, let's grab some from the chat. Oh, good. We're at 188 likes, 205 watching. Thank you all for coming out on this Saturday. It sounds like my thunderstorm has kind of tapered off. I haven't heard thunder in a while, so that's good. It looks less like night outside. Yeah, so if you guys have any kind of questions, you can, like, we're Q&A stuff, you can just tag me if you feel like it. Zoe the Small says, I heard a Radio Westeros podcast where they were telling the myth that a dragon laid a clutch of eggs in the deepest part of the Stark crypt. Yeah, that's a part of the Pact of Ice and Fire that Jace Velaryon or Jace Targaryen, I forget which one he's actually called, the strong child of Rhaenyra Targaryen and Breakbones, went north in order to secure the assistance of the Starks in their war. And doing so, there's a bunch of different stories that came out about how this happened. They did sign it. They did sign a Pact of Ice and Fire, and one story is that Jace ended up deciding that Sarah Snow, Lord Cregan's bastard sister, was super cute, and they ended up hooking up, and they got married beneath the Winterfell heart tree. And from that, the Pact of Ice and Fire came out. There's another story where it was essentially just like there was a promise that I think a Targaryen princess would marry into the Stark line. And there's also this idea that Jace's dragon laid a clutch of eggs, and that was essentially the payment that he left them behind rather than taking them back to Dragonstone, that they sealed the this pact of ice and fire with dragon eggs. That's I tend to believe the Sarah Snow one, that's the newest one. That's the one that George put in Fire and Blood. And it also seems to fit with the characterization of the Strongs and Jace in general. Like, there was a story that he went to the Vale to secure their loyalty as well. And something about oral sex came up. Like, if he could pleasure the Lady of the Vale, she would give them her support. The Strongs also are definitely known for their sexy times and their intense horniness, so that would be the one I would guess the most. But again, the idea of the eggs underneath Winterfell, I think, is a reference to Jon. That it's supposed to tell you that there are dragons in Winterfell. There has been one there all the time, and you just need to discover it, and it will make some kind of big difference. Let's see here. Let me scroll up. Ned Braden says, I can't wait for Jon to go down there. Seems inevitable. Definitely, there's been a lot of theories that Jon will go down into the crypts and discover his true identity. There's been ideas that, like, in Lyanna's crypts, there's a harp, or Rhaegar's signet ring, or maybe the wedding shroud from when Rhaegar and Lyanna married. Sort of, I think it goes back to the this happens in Arthurian legend, where a character goes down into a crypt and discovers his true identity. So that would be that could be something that comes up. He came in at the right time, Tubbs, talking about the Jace Velaryon and the Strongs. Continued idea that they're just gonna bang their way to victory, which kind of works. Oh, only Shadowkin, no G on that one. How many places are volcanic in Westeros? You have Dragonstone and Winterfell. Winterfell is built on the hot springs. So there's a few. I mean, obviously Dragonstone. The presence of obsidian in places tells you there used to be volcanic activity. So it seems that a lot of these caves that the children have may not have carved them. They may be like lava tubes. If you know anything about geology and volcanism, that when a volcano burns out, it often leaves behind these the passages that used to be filled with lava, and the presence of obsidian. There's been some speculation that the Iron Islands may have been a volcano, like the Iron Man Bay, with the way that the Iron Islands seem probably to have been at one point, and now are separated in a way that looks like a volcanic explosion. Could tell you that there was one over there. There's the idea from Hardhome that it used to be kind of a thriving wildling city, and then it kind of just exploded one night. It seems to be a volcanic explosion as well. Yeah, that could be another one. Trying to think about what other places are known to be volcanic. I would guess that most of the places the Children of the Forest built places probably have some kind of volcanic idea to them, or some history of that, because they seem to always use obsidian. They always have these obsidian weapons. They use them to hunt, they use them to fight, and you can't have obsidian without volcanoes. So unless they had like a total continental trade system, then they probably were getting it from local places. It just seems like a lot of the volcanic activity has essentially gone out. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, underneath Bloodraven's cave, like underneath those rivers and in those deep tunnels that Bran keeps exploring through Hodor, that maybe there is like some sort of burnt out volcano down there. Yes, also the Isle of Faces. That structure, when you think about the Isle of Faces, the big island with an island, the big lake with an island in the middle, that is something that can be fairly typical of a giant volcano that essentially blew itself out. You can see that up in like at Crater Lake up in Oregon, other places around the world where an explosion that was so enormous that it blew apart the mountain, all it left was a crater that eventually just became a lake, that kind of thing. It's actually, that's something that comes up in Crusader Kings too. There's a very rare event where if you hold Winterfell, you can actually, if you have the trying to find a dragon egg thing, that it will pop up and you can find the dragon egg under Winterfell. Very rare though. I looked up how often it happens. It's never happens. $10 from Shadowkin, only Shadowkin. Thank you very much. Yep, that will be going to charity as well. That's called a Mar, a crater filled with water later. Yeah, that's a fairly consistent idea within or consistent thing that can happen with super volcanoes. Got about 10 minutes left, so keep throwing them, and then we'll get out of here, and then I'm gonna go watch Radio Westeros in an hour. Let me scroll up. I think I missed some. Ed Pismenic. Will the dead from the Winterfell crypts rise to fight on the side of their heroes, or they rise to attack the heroes in the show, or something else? Although there are a lot of hints that ancient starts and that First Men characters used to be necromancers, that doesn't seem to be an idea that they do anymore. Like, the most likely person to do it is Bran, but it doesn't, he has not found the power to reanimate the dead yet. So if the Starks in the crypts end up rising, I expect they'll rise on the side of the others, that it will be during some kind of attack, and it'll be this horrible scene where this horrible scene where the dead, especially the dead that people may know who are in Winterfell, rise from the dead and try and kill them. That's something that George has written about before in Night Flyers. That is, spoiler alert, the dead rise in that, and they end up attacking their friends, and it's this horrible motif that he loves playing with, where you have to, and it's not just him, lots of zombie movies, lots of stories with the undead do this, where at first it's just the random dead, but then it's the dead that you know, and you have to like re-kill your mother, or you have to re-kill your father, or something like that. Yeah, I think definitely on the side of the others. The necromancy that has been shown on the side of the humans has been like a one-off. It's been Thoros has not shown the ability to raise an army of fire whites. He has raised one, so it doesn't seem like that's in the cards for the sides of humanity. Jack Peavy says, what are your thoughts on the Ghost at Winterfell Theon chapter? Very interesting chapter. I think that's, like, people have been wondering for a while, who is the hooded figure, who is the one that is pestering Theon, calls him a turncloak. The Ghost in Winterfell chapter is such an interesting one, especially as you start to see Theon come back to himself, but also you see a lot of magical mechanics. Like, that's where you see the Bran talking through the heart tree to Theon, and you get this idea of what it looks like when a Greenseer is talking to you, where you see the where you can almost see the face, where you can hear the voice on the wind, when the leaves can kind of be used as hands, like one lands on his forehead. The idea of a ghost in Winterfell, though, is something that is kind of ever present, where the people that live there definitely have this idea that long before Theon, that the dead are not dead, that they live with their history, they live with their past at all times. So there being ghosts in Winterfell, I mean, it could be the Greenseers constantly messing with them, but the ideas of necromancy and the way the Starks live with their past is total. There are always ghosts in Winterfell, that like literal ones or just figurative ones. Yeah, Guilty Undertaker says, I can't wait to see Stannis' reaction when the trees start talking to him. Yeah, that would be kind of funny if what would Bran say to Stannis? Like, get bent? Maybe. Isabel Lamego says, any chance we see Ned's skeleton trying to kill his children? No, because Ned's skeleton is not in the crypts. His skeleton has been lost. It was supposed to be sent back, and it has not made it north of the neck yet. His bones are still MIA, basically. Lady Dustin, in particular, has been trying to find them. It's kind of unclear why, what she's doing with it. What she's going to do with the bones, but yeah, Ned's bones have not been interred, but it's implied that Brandon and Lyanna's bones are in there. Rickard Stark's body is probably in there too. And it's also not just, again, like I said, it's not just the lords, so presumably Ned's mother is in there. Aaron M brings up a good question of, I don't think the straight skeletons can be reanimated. It's unclear exactly how much like flesh you still need on the body to reanimate it. It's noted that a lot of the times that when a body is transported from elsewhere, that they boil the bones to remove the flesh, and all you get back is just a pile of bones, and you put that in a sepulcher. So I think it's very likely that whatever bones are still in the crypts of Winterfell after thousands of years will probably be reanimated. That the others are going to get their hands on them and use it as a revenge plot. I think we'll just take like one or two more, and then I'll go hide from the thunder and lightning and wait for Waiter Westeros. Only Shadowcan S. Do you think Arya will be the queen of a mighty wolf pack? Yes. George has talked about how he didn't make a giant pack of wolves attacking people in the Riverlands that Arya is connected to for no reason, that they're going to come into play. There have been ideas that the wolves may attack the Lannisters that are transporting Jane Westerling in order to free them, or I'm not really sure what for. Maybe they'll just attack. Oh good, just in time. You guys hit 200 likes. Great. Cool. This is happening. I get to look like a train engineer. Yep, this happened. I get to put this thing on. All right, so one more, and then finish answering the question. Yes, I think Nymeria will lead that wolf pack. It seems to be for sure that they're going to have some kind of purpose Whether Arya's in control or not, I'm not sure of. Nymeria is pretty independent at this point, but I wouldn't be surprised if she found a way to guide them or in some way use them if she recognizes somebody. Sasuke says, if we donate another day, will you use the money to buy yourself a turtle pin? Sure. I don't know how much a turtle pin is, but why not? I may burn the hat one day. Maybe that'll be a fun video. I burn the hat. Lady Leaf Underhill says, what do you think about In Deep Geeks theory? That name is a tongue twister, Robert. You know it. That it's the statues that will come to life. I don't think so. There's not really been any kind of mechanism shown in the books for how you would get a stone statue to come to life. Like, there are, like in Tolkien's world, it's definitely a thing where like golems exist, or not golem like the creature, but like magical beings made of stone. That's a definite part of other fantasy worlds. George's version has been basically the stone men that grayscale turns you into essentially a stone statue and you die. That doesn't seem to be what the Stark statues are. We know they're carved. They have Ned's carved, even though his body isn't in there yet. So I would not think that the stone statues themselves will get up and move, but I think the foreshadowing is definitely the idea that the dead will rise, not the actual statues themselves. I thought Tolkien had like some sort of giant rock monsters or something. Or was that something from the movies? I forget. Even if it's not Tolkien, there's tons of other stories where there's rock monsters, where there's like magical constructs that sorcerers bring to life. That has not, as far as I can remember, has not showed up in A Song of Ice and Fire. All right, so that is 4 o'clock. Gonna go offline in a couple minutes, but I'm gonna do some plugs. Please stay to the end, especially if you're watching it back. It actually helps quite a lot with the YouTube algorithm that it doesn't see like that, where the viewership is going like this and it just goes poof. Where you can find me, obviously here on the Joe Magician YouTube channel. Subscribe, like, comment, do all the things. You can find me on Twitter at the Joe Magician, same on Instagram. You can find me on, there's always a audio version of this that shows up where it's called The Wit and Wisdom of Joe Magician. You can find it basically anywhere you want to, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, except for the private ones where you have to get invited to them. I'm not on those. And if you listen on those things, it'd be great if you could leave a review there, saying you like it, or what your thoughts are on what you're listening to at patreon.com/JoeMagician. I'll have a video coming out this week. I have the audio finished. I just have to add music and do the animating and all that other kind of stuff about how John Connington will take Storm's End in the Winds of Winter. In theory, once I'm done with that, Jeff, aka Brendan Beefish, is going to do the stream with me about it, but he's kind of tied up at the moment, so we'll see when that happens. And also, there won't be a stream this coming weekend. I have to work, so the next stream will be the Saturday after next, but at the same time. I'll put it out on the channel and all that other stuff so you can find it. Again, all the money from this stream I'm going to be donating to help out Black Lives Matter and the various organizations out there protesting against police brutality. I'll post the receipt or whatever later. We ended up raising, let me double check the number, $138. So that'll be going out there, plus the super chat. So that'll be another $5, so like 140 something bucks plus ad revenue. So probably like 150 will go out. But yeah, thanks so much. I'll see you on Tuesday. I'm planning to do my Crusader Kings 2 stream again, and then the week afterwards. So Thanks very much. Go watch Radio Westeros at 5 p.m. on their channel. They've been doing weekly live streams for Winds of Winter prep. And also down below in the description, there's a big list of Black and people of color in the community that you should definitely go check out, subscribe to their channels, buy from their shops or whatever. Give them a listen because they deserve it. Thanks so much, everybody. I'll see you later.